Hello and welcome to another night shift. My name is Yazil, and today we want to look into save our spawn points into our database. So last time we made these table by hand and filled that up, and this time we want to do that in Unity. So let me show you an example. So we're gonna add that item, and then we just choose an item out of our item database, which is here. We know that already, and we say it's a new item and the spawner is like 30 seconds, and we say save item, and with the save item, let me close these things. Oh, no, we need to go there. So it is generated here in our hierarchy, and we just move that into the item spot where I want to have it. You see it's a refresh loop with the spawner ID 7, and we just go and game object and move into view, and just position that where we want to have that. Well, let's see, somewhere here I guess is good. So then we look into our database. You see it's not here in a moment, but if we refresh that, you see the refresh tube spawn ID 7 is here, the item ID 4 and the timer 30, and of course it's spawned. And well, we updated that, so let's close our database editor and just start the game and see if it's still working. So we're going to login. Yeah, we saved that, and we start the game, and I got the 2-2 again. So here's our guy, and there are the 2 items we just generated, and we picked them up just fine. So that's what we want to do today, and for that we need, of course, a new plugin. But the plugin is real easy because we have a plugin already. So we just copy the plugin for the spawn items, and you just get rid of everything else you don't need. So let's go to the plugin in steps. So at first, of course, is the namespace, then the public class SpawnItem database plugin, and we have the configurator settings, and we have the byte tag save SpawnItem, get SpawnItem, and get SpawnItemList, and of course the boolean for debug. And then we have the stuff for the plugin itself. So we have the name, version, commands, author, and email. In commands, I defined one command, and which is the debug, which is debug the command, and that's the command. And we going for the function debug command. So after that, we install that. We have these already in the old plugin from the last video. We just changed the tags here. I got 8 for the tag, and the spawn item 3, and to get spawn item is 1, and to get spawn item list is 2, and of course the debug. And then we have a little change here in our database. We don't want to have the ID as an auto increment, since we always want to have the ID which is the same than our ID in the scriptable object in Unity. So we're going for can't be null, and it's a primary key. And then we add here the title varchar 100, so 100 chars for our title, and the rest is the same. In your if you have these table already, and since you did the last video, you should have that, you just move into the workbench and go for the table spawn item and alter the table. Add here the title as a new column, sorry. And in the ID, you just get rid of the AI auto increment. So then apply that, and you are ready with your data or with our database. And I hope you got that. And then we go and going for the config reader. Oh no, sorry, we have that. We have that. Yes, we go for the config reader, and we read out of the settings.cnf. So this part is only when we install, and then we start with the normal stuff here. So we have the byte, ushort, and the bool, which is everything we have in here. You know that already. I just opened them quick for you. It's just the same as always. So that's the stuff for getting the variables or the values out of the settings.cnf file. And when we're ready with that, we just add ourselves to the on-server message, and we want to part that into the on-server message function. So let me close that up. That's the installation. Nope. So, and then next is the on-server message. In the on-server message, we just, let me close that though, so you can see that. We just have the data tag, and then we have the data subject, this save spawn item, get spawn item list, and get spawn item. And you just delete every function else, but leave the update spawn item database, and there we add the string title here. So we have the ID, the string title, the int spawn ID, the int ID, item ID, the int timer, and the is spawned, and day, hour, and minute as an int also. Then we're going to try and update the database and set the title and stuff like that, where the ID is equal to the ID, and we of course we have the new query parameters here for our stuff here. You also know that because we did it a couple of times now in our tutorial. So, and then we catch the database function. If we got an error, we want to print that out. If we want to have it as a debug message only, you have to ask for if debug in front of that. And then we have, let's close that. Then we have the save spawn item database. It's also the same we have had in the last video, but we added the string title here and insert into the table spawn item here the title also, and which the add title, of course, from our query parameters we have here. So you add the query parameter for title here also. So, and of course, then you catch the exception if there's something wrong with the database. Then we have our debug command. So that's just easy. We have debug is not or is equal to not debug. So if it's true, it's false. It's false, it's true. And then we just log something out here. So, and the last one of the extra function is the color log. You know that already. I have that just to have the text color in something I like. So that's the base, and now we are looking for these stuff here. And let's start with the save spawn item, and that's also just easy. We grab the information from the network over the darkrift reader, and we create an int ID, spawn ID, item ID timer, and a string title, and we read that out of our reader string. And then we're going to try and see if we have something in our table. So we select star from table spawn item where spawn ID is equal to spawn ID limit 1. So we know when the spawn ID here is already there. If not, we can do that. You also could do that on the ID. Since we changed that to not auto increment, we could change that here to the ID also instead of the spawn ID. Then we're going to check if the error is equal to 1. So if we got 1 row back, then we make an update. And if we don't get any rows back, we just save the spawn item. So we use the both function we had before and give the ID title, spawn ID, item ID, timer, and these default values for is spawned, hour, minute, and day here in the function. So then we just catch the database exception, and then we catch the key not found exception when we have an error here in the Darkroot reader. Of course, you could do here and if debug and stuff like that again. So the next is the get SpawnItemList, and in the SpawnItemList we just try for the database row, and we select star from table SpawnItem, and then we don't have any query parameters, and if the array length is greater than 0, we're gonna debug something out, and we go and loop through every row in the array. So it's int I equals to 0 while e is from 1 lesser than array.length and e plus plus. And the Darkroot writer is a new writer, and we write our stuff in there from the array. So we're going for array I ID, array I title, array I spawn ID, array I item ID, array I timer. And then you could debug something out like this, and you send this one line to the conReply connection with the tag get spawn item with the writer. Why we just use get spawn item here is we just scroll to every row and we just let Unity know we have one new item. So we have a list to send, but we do that in single packets. And then we just catch the database exception and have the debug and so on, like you know. And the last one is in our little plugin, the database subject, this get spawn item. And we just do the same. Instead of we just selecting all, we grab the spawn ID from the database reader. Of course, you could do that with the ID itself also, as I had on top there. So then we try and get a database row, and I call it array again, and we have a Darkroot server.execute query, and we select star from table item where spawn ID is equal to spawn ID limit 1. So we have the query parameter spawn ID, and then if the array is equal to 1, so we found something, we just write that again to Unity. So create a writer, get the values of the array, put that in the writer, and send the writer to the reply. So and then catch the database exception again and the key not found from Unity, from Darkroot reader. So that's the little plugin, and where we want to have that is we want to have that in an extra server like we did with the item database functions. So you just copy your, let me pick that up. You just copy your server and have these function in here. You need the MySQL connector at the SpawnItem database. It's a new plugin we did. I have the Yazil helper in there, and the DB items which we had before, and these are the masters. I just leave them there. So, and in the config, you just let let me open that. You just pick up a new port, a different one, of course, and then you start the server. And let me start that. And you're ready to go. So you see we are on a different port. If we go, for example, to this one, this is the server. It serves as this port. And for our manipulating the database direct, we have just a new port with stuff. Of course, as I told in the last video, you have to protect that port via firewall, or you have to build a login screen or something like that, or even transfer a hash code that you are so nobody else can manipulate your data from outside. I would do that stuff like if you are on creating stuff, start everything locally, and then just export the database and put that into your server or into your live server on the on the network. So that's for security. And then we just move to Unity. So in Unity, so here in Unity, we work with a couple things. One thing is the item editor. We created for the item database already. And of course, we have a SpawnItem. So the base for the SpawnItem database scriptable object. So we need to work with SpawnItem, SpawnItem database, and with the item editor. The reason why I took so long for this video is I wasn't sure how to get this information to you, and I thought the best is the item editor script will be on my website free for all, next to the stuff for the Patreon guys, where everything is in. So it's real great C# script. So we just go through there, and you can download the version on my website, yazil.de. So let's get started with the item, SpawnItem, and the SpawnItem database. And let's open that up in... Nope, that's the wrong one. Let's go there. So here we have the SpawnItem script, and it's just a system serializable public class SpawnItem, and we have the ID in there. We have the string title, we have the Spawn ID, the item ID, and I don't know if we need that in a moment or if we don't need that, so you don't have to get that in here, but I thought maybe someday we want to have positions in there. Then we have the spawn seconds, so how often it will be spawned, and is spawned or not, of course. And we have the pickup time here. We maybe use that later on for informing guys when the item is up again or something like that. So in a moment, just as the vector, we don't need that here. So that's the class for our SpawnItem, and the next is the SpawnItem database. So we just have the namespace yazil item system again, and we have a public class SpawnItem database, and it comes from scriptable objects. And it has a serialized field string with the database name on it, and a serialized field with a list of spawn items, which we created here, and I called it item, and it is equal to the new list from spawn items. So that's the base for creating the scriptable object, and the scriptable object depends on these items. So the next is our item editor, and you see already it is, we don't need that, is quite complex. So we start from the top and we go through that with the commands for the old stuff. So here the public vars for it's a local server, and it has the new port number for the server, and then we have the private variables, and it has top tab state, and it has a width from the window size. We have the item database item base, and we have the SpawnItem database underscore SpawnItem database, which is a scriptable object we have new. And we have next to the item index, the SpawnItemIndex. And of course, we have the string item name, which we had in the or looking for the search variable when we searched through the databases. And we have the database path folder. In my case, it's asset scripts Yazil item system database. And then we have the network stuff, which we had before, is 7 for the connection, and get item data list, and save item data list. It's 210 for the item we had, and new is the SpawnDB. So the SpawnDB is the 8, and the same numbers we used in the plugin, 1, 2, and 3 for the 3 different states we want to do in our plugin. Next is the initializing. You initialize the window. Here is the dockable. If you want to have a standalone window, you can do that with that. Just uncomment that, and the window will be generated. That's all stuff we used in the item database already. Then we have the top tab state. So we have the init database, the spawn database, and the about, which are basically the 3 different windows we generate in our editor. So, and then we have the on GUI, and we call a function table top tab, and we switch the states. And let's open that. We switch the states through these 3 windows. So the one window is the show item database function we call, or we show the spawn database, or we show about, and the default value is show about. So since we switch through that, we have in here the on top, and on top is just the buttons. We call the buttons where we have the item database, spawn database, and about, and we switch the states here through what we have on options. So we call that, then we switch through that, and we go through the different functions here. But first we're going to have enable. So we grab our item databases, and we had these already, and next to these we of course want to get on to create the item SpawnItem database, and we want to load the database and see how, if we want to generate a new one or if we use an old one. And for that we're going to load database, which is down here. Load database. We open that, and it just goes and loads the folder path plus database name plus asset, and we look if the T is there. If not, we generate a new database here. It's also a thing we did a couple times more, and then we return the T, and we have a new database. So here we look if it's existent or if something is there. If it's not, we generate one. So after we have a database, we look if the database SpawnItem database.item.count is equal to 0. That means we don't have anything in there. We have to add 2 items. As always, we have the 0. We don't want to handle with the 0, so we have just an empty field in there, and we have the first real item in the database also. So let's go to at Spawn. Here it is. We just have a Spawn item. It's a new item and it comes from new Spawn item, and it has a new item.title, and we just give it new. You could do something like empty or whatever you want there. Then we say the new item ID is the SpawnItem database.item.count. So that's the reason why we don't want to handle with 0. We had to do something like this here if we want to handle with the zeros. And then we have a new item into our database. So we use SpawnItem database.item.add, and we add the new item in there. And then we go and set the SpawnItemIndex to the SpawnItem database.item.count -1. So that's the new item index we have there in a moment. So we add the items on enable. So we grab the databases and we add the items, and we say this top state is about. So at first we move to the about table. So on update, it's just an easy thing. We just look if we are connected, and if we are connected, we receive. Top tab, we had that already. Show about, it's just a GUI layout, a couple lines with some text in there. Nothing special is going on here. And we are done with that. And now we coming to the show database. And show database is a little bit bigger. Basically, you should go through this step by step and see where the things are. For example, here is the begin horizontal, so everything comes here in a row. And we had an item name. It is editor GUI layout text field, and it's the item title, and we going an item name as string, and we give that out there. That means since it is a text field, we can put something in here, and we have that in this variable. And after that, we can use the function find spawn item with name, and the name we put in this function is the item name. Let's go to the find spawn item with name. It's here. You just have the string name in here, and you scroll through the database. And in the database, you look if the title is equal to the name you put in here. And if it's the case, you're going to set the spawn item index equal to the SpawnItem database.item.id. So it will be changed there. If, for example, if the 5th item has the name here, the SpawnItem index will be to 5, and everything will be set to there. So that's for searching. And then we have at the end of our horizontal, that means we begin a new row, and we save and load from the database here, and that's just 3 buttons, and we have 3 functions here: the save spawn item, the read spawn item, and read SpawnItemList. So let's go through these functions. Save spawn item, sorry. So we have here this save spawn item, which is really easy. We just make sure we are connected. So let us move to the db connect function. So it's just if we are connected, if we are not connected, sorry, we're going to have the Darkrift API network and background, and we say connect, and the server IP and server port we defined in the variables on top. And then we bind ourselves to the data function on data handler. So we have to write an on data handler function, of course, where we work through the data we get from the internet or from the server. So let's move up there again where we've been. So the next is the read spawn item. And in the read spawn item, let's go somewhere down. Read spawn item, we just make sure we are connected, and we're using the Darkrift writer write something there, and what we want to write there is the ID. And we want to send a message to the server with the tag with the subject get SpawnItem Data. So we just let the server know we want to have the data from this item. And while we are here, the other function is read SpawnItemList, and in the item list we just say tell the server, hey guy, we want to have everything here, so we don't have to have a message here. Sorry. So we just let the server know, give us everything. And let's move up there. Again, that's the three functions we have here: SpawnItem, save SpawnItem, read SpawnItem, and there we give in our Spawn ID. And then we have the read SpawnItem list. And that's just all for the buttons, just the three functions. So then is the end horizontal and the begin horizontal for the next row. And in the next row, we just have the command for navigations. And it's just going to the beginning, going one back, going one forward, and going to the end, and add a new item. So we just set the spawn item indexes to the new values. Here, it's just not hard. Just copy them down, or at least just experiment with that a little bit. It's just a basic function for moving through something. And here we just have an add spawn item. We just use the function for the add a new item, and we're done with that. The next is we want to give out the database item. So we have the spawner ID, spawner time in seconds, and we just give out the values which are in here on the SpawnItemIndex, whatever it is in the moment. And the next is we have an int slider, and the int slider tells us we have a number from 1 to the item database item.count. So that's the main reason we can't have that in an extra file. We have that, or have to have that here in these also, so we have access to the item database.item. And for example, if we have 10 items, the slider goes from 0 to 9, from 1 to 10, since we don't work with the zeros, so that's why we have that here. And we save that what we put into the slider in the item ID, and in the item ID or from the item ID we grab the item, and we use a little trick here. Instead of going for a rectangle angle and fill that up with a sprite with such a search, we just use the GUI layout object field, and we define a sprite variable we don't need any longer, just for this one point. Everything will be generated automatically, and you just have a type of sprite here, and it gives out the sprite while we are moving through our slider. And the next is we have a GUI layout button spawn item, and that will spawn the item into our hierarchy, and therefore we create a new function, spawn item. Let's move down there. It's just on the end. It's here, spawn item, and we create a new game object and instantiate that. And going for the model we have in our item database, and then we look if the spawn ID is equal to 0. We just give the spawn ID to the value we or to the next free value, And if the spawn item ID title is too new, we know we have to do something here, and we just have the title out from our items to the spawn item index. So if we don't do anything, it's just filled that up with the item title we have in our item database. Then we go .name and set the name to the title plus an underscore and the spawn ID. So we have names like bag underscore 510 or whatever, as you saw in the demonstration. And of course, we have an go.getComponent pickup item spawn ID, and that means in the game object we created, there should be a spawn and pickup item script, and in this pickup item script we set the spawn ID to something we have in here. And then we use the function save spawn item. That means we just save the new item we have here automatically in our database and have that in access. So let me go up on here. Okay, we've been at spawn item, and then we have the function if GUI changed. So if we changed the value or searched for something or whatever it is, we have the editor utility.set dirty, and we set dirty the database, so the database will be written down. So when we next time open the database or this editor, we have the actual values because they are saved in our database. Basically the same we had already with our show item database. I'm not going through everything here because we did that already in an earlier video. In an earlier video, I think we forgot the GUI change here, so make sure you have that in your script. And so at spawn item we had that. Add item is basically the same. We had that already. Find item with name is basically the same. We scroll through the database and stuff like that. We had that already also in the old one. And the load database, we discussed that already. So on destroy, if we are connected, then we are going to release ourselves from the onData handler, and we disconnect. And in the onData handler, this part we already had, so that's just for the item. So you see, we write everything down in the, or we read everything which we get from the network and stuff like that, and then create a new item. Let me close that and go for the data tag spawn database. That's the new part, and we just look if we get spawn item data, and if we get this subject, we're using the dark riff reader and going for debug log.item, so we just know we have something here, and then we look if the ID is greater than the spawn item database item.count -1. That means we gonna check if or how much rows we have there, or how many. It's so many. How many rows we have there, and if the ID is greater, then we create a new item and save that in our database. And after that, we just update the values to title, spawn ID, item ID, and spawn seconds. And we are done with this part. So every time we get one of these messages, for example, in our plugin, we get a transfer to list. We just scroll every time here and save the item, save the item, save the item, save the item, and every package we get here. So now we are coming to the save items. I just scroll through there. It's just the whole thing for the items. Then we have the read item and the read item list, and that's all old stuff. We just make sure we are connected before we do anything with the server, and then we are done with that. So, as I told, it's a huge script, and it has many parts in it. The most parts are the old one just copied and changed the values. But as I told, it was hard for me to describe that. So this file will be on my website free for all. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, just leave a like. If you liked it even more, as always, hit the subscribe button. And yeah, well, that's it for today, and see you soon. Your Yazil.